I love these ones. So many guys, they think they got it. They're doing everything by the book, and they're missing the whole damn point. Mids watch, Ryan, you guys, welcome. We're on the short end of it, the end of the thing. I don't have a catchphrase for this, whatever. I'll just get into it. Guys having a rough patch needs some insight. Long story short, married for 3 years, been together for 5. No kids, not yet. Sex before marriage was minimum 3 times a week, sometimes twice a day. I worked the graveyard shift. She would sometimes wake me up during my sleep to sleep with me, and I'd even pick her up from work when we got home, and she'd pull down my pants and say that I've been thinking about your Johnson the whole time and just go down on me there. Even got to the point where I used to, I don't know why he's saying this, but I used to handle it myself before I picked her up so I could last longer throughout the day. I never had to ask for sex. It would just happen. It was very frequent. Then we got married, and it slowed down. I became irritable and would whine like a bitch. She hated that. He stopped, then she hated it when he groped her or tried to put his hands down her pants or grab her ass or whatever, so that stopped. It got to the point that if she shot him down, he would give up, and 2 minutes later she'd say, "Why did you stop? You should try harder." He's like, "Effing women." Then it got to the point where she asked him not to have sex for 30 days because it was stressing her out. He stopped. Did sex improve? Nope. Still old, once or twice a week. Now, instead of asking, I tell her, "Let's go." And if that happens, it sometimes works, right? So now sex has dwindled down to about twice a week, and that's about the amount she says yes to. Doesn't matter if he's aggressive, doesn't matter if he's not aggressive, whether he asks, whether he doesn't, where he gropes, where he doesn't. He's like, that's it, it's just this, and everything else is a hard no. She tells me today that she feels that he's nagging her because she basically tries to have sex, because he tries to have sex 5 days a week instead of twice. He has a very high libido, but hers became lower. So she started to try that every Thursday. She wants to play a sex board game, which he's like, it's kind of helping. He's tried massage parlors, all this stuff. Fast forward to now, I found the Married Red Pill and working on my frame, and things are starting to improve, which is good. But again, sex now started to tail off again. I haven't gained any weight. She hasn't gained weight. It's really just a mental thing. Anyways, he just repeats the same speech again. So Jack comes in. He's like, "Jeff, man, you're not getting it. Look, very few things in life are very directional. If A, then B, right? Almost every sport, the beginners are taught, if A, then B. Little kids playing pee-wee football, coaches are trying to get just a herd moving in one direction, so they keep repeating, drive your legs, push forward, and basically focus on forward advancement. Then eventually, they start using misdirection, reverses, laterals, etc. Football is way more complicated than if have ball, move forward. Everybody is giving you shit here because you're trying to reduce your entire marriage to if A, then B. Should I do C or D? But that's just like reducing football strategy to a series of binary options instead of the complex and holistic strategy that it requires. So your questions, the reason everybody keeps saying you're missing the point, you dumbass, is because if your wife does A and then you react with B, it's literally the opposite of frame. I can already tell I'm going to write a whole bunch about this, but I don't want you to read it until you can open your mind to the idea. The idea that binary, contingent, response-oriented thinking is violating Married Red Pill 101. It's nothing to do with frame. I don't even blame you, because a lot of the Married Red Pill has a lot of macro-destructive or macro-descriptive content, like you don't negotiate desire, but it also has a lot of micro-prescriptive content. When she nags you about the groceries, use, agree, and amplify, example. And it's not particularly well organized, although some guys, and he uses an example here of the Blue Pill Professor and Hunter Drew, of all people, are doing their best in their books, their podcast, and blogging efforts. You notice he leaves me out. Just want to point this out. That'll be important for later. So you're not the only guy to get the wrong end of the stick. You're clearly somebody who's gotten some mileage out of the micro prescriptions, but that's not going to take you very far. What you need to do is open your mind to some of the ideas that are a lot broader and foundationally important, but require more thinking and mental processing than if A, then B. He has a huge football analogy here, but it's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm just going to skip it. So this is why concepts like frame are incredibly strong ideas, but also extremely hard to quantify and give meaty, bite-sized pieces of advice. So you're basically coming to us and saying, I tried lining up with 2 defensive linemen, but my wife got annoyed, so when I did that, I ripped off a 30-yard run. What should I do next? You realize there's no easy answer to that, right? Because first, why didn't that work? Or, what should you do next aren't even the right question. The right question is, why am I struggling to establish my narrative? And it could be for several reasons. It could be because you have no talent and you're an ass clown, low sexual value, whatever. It could be because you always do the same thing and the sheer boring consistency of it makes you unpredictable or makes you predictable. It could be because you thought the narrative is actually somewhat successful, but you're too focused on achieving a scorecard. You're not able to see the broader progression. So which is it? I don't know. Why don't you tell me? So what the hell is he talking about here? Well, the point of narratives, and I've talked before about the narrative structure, narrative-based decision-making, mental models. This is kind of where frame comes in. It's a concept called setting the narrative. So for example, a lot of the stuff you do as a micro level in the Married Red Pill, workout, establish boundaries, agree and amplify, fogging, amused mastery, negative inquiry, negative assertion, DEVI. There's all these acronyms. If you want to understand what they are and you have no idea, I've got a playlist in the bottom here called the Sidebar, and it's all of the Red Pill canonical books that you're going to learn about this stuff. Dr. Robert Glover, Dr. Manuel Smith, Dr. David Buss. It's basically educated things. The gist of it, though, is once you're attractive, just not being unattractive, which is very, just keep doing good things and stop doing bad things, works. But then you end up having to pull your wife into your frame. This is, again, another concept called the scoreboard I talk about. Get out of your wife's frame, build yourself a frame, pull your wife into your frame. And in this case, pulling your wife into your frame is about setting the narrative. And a lot of guys are very autistic, which is great when you're giving them instructions, not so great when they have to chart a path in their own life. And that's kind of what this guy's problem is. He always thinks reactively. If the wife does this, then I do this. Well, then she does this and I do this. And a lot of guys do it. It never works. It's not useful. Don't do it.
Charles Bukowski, Jordan Peterson, Neil Strauss. I like these guys. Add some salt to cover up the bitterness of middle-aged soccer moms and put in the oven for 45 minutes. Optionally, you can take from all this stuff what you want and leave the rest. So enjoy Fuck Files. 15 lessons from a decade of women, now on audio.
The reason why is because you're basically letting the other person dictate terms. You're living inside of their frame. Because all a girl has to do is react negatively and you change everything. Maybe what you're doing is good and she's just being bratty. How do you know? Because you don't have any sense of self here. You're just reacting to the other person. And on a subliminal level, people can understand when you're doing that, and it comes across as very ham-fisted and overtly manipulative, which tends to make people not want to adhere to it. It's going to be a concept that comes up a lot in Praxeology Volume 2, where I talk about dread, is that women hate sales and women love marketing. The used car salesman leaves you feeling dirty on the inside, and it's ham-fisted, and everybody wants to fight against the manipulations, as opposed to marketing makes everybody line up to buy an iPhone, right? I guess, you know what? There's a second part to this, and I was kind of wondering if I should read it. I'll probably get onto it too. So, the guy also has some complaints about his professional life, and Jack's like, all right, you know what? Let's talk about our professional lives. And the guy's like, I need to find a better position at work, make more money. A lot of guys here are struggling with a sort of underwhelming career and realize it's time to stop acting like an underachieving man-child and get their professional life in order. Presumably that means, title and salary increases, raises, promotions, moving on to another employee that will give you those raises and promotions. There's several other forms of development that don't involve climbing various corporate ladders, but let's just focus on these. So day one of this post-red pill professional new you is are you just going to walk into your boss's office and say, hey, I decided I want a promotion, so let me just tell you exactly what you should do for me, and then once I do what I need to do to get there, you're going to promote me, and that's how it works, right? He's like, no, that's not how it works. The way it works is you start changing your narrative. Before, you just banged on your keyboard enough to do your job with adequate but unspectacular competence, which generally means you'll avoid layoffs and get that 2.7% cost of living increase every year, but that's it. That's the old narrative. And I'm sure everything you did reflected that narrative. Your punctuality, your wardrobe, your work output, your behavior in meetings. The narrative is, I'm an unexceptional cog in the machine. So you realize if you want to get promoted, a lot of that needs to change. Your narrative, your frame, needs to become something like, I am a professionally polished, high-performance employee that can add dramatically more value to the company in roles with greater responsibility and financial compensation. You dress a little sharper. You show up to every meeting 5 minutes early. Your emails now have explicitly correct grammar and punctuation. Your work output is timely, detailed, thorough, and comprehensive. You may only have to do this for a month before your boss starts remarking, keep up the good work, Jeff. You're saving our butts out there. And this can be a signal that your narrative is on the right track. But it can also be a signal that other people around you are accepting your frame, but maybe not. I don't think I need to tell you that quite often, you'll kick ass at your job and still not get promoted. Just like quite often, an NFL defensive coordinator tries to do some creative scheme and gets blown out. So once again, if this happens, you notice there's an internal positive response, but not in the material outcome you were building towards in your narrative. You need to think about why this is happening. And your boss will communicate overtly with you to some degree, more than your wife will, but even then, you'll have to ponder his response and how it fits into your narrative. This is an example a lot of guys think you can work as hard as you want at your job, they'll never promote you. But again, that's part of the narrative. That means you're probably going to have to move out. Go get another job with somebody else. Sometimes there could be, reasons outside of it. Maybe you're focusing hard on the wrong points, but that's the point here. And it's all too possible that you're kicking ass and your boss is a sociopath who invents professional transgressions because he knows if he promotes you, then you'll no longer carry his water and he may actually have to work again. But this probably shouldn't be the very first theory you consider, especially since it's only been a few months. If it requires a lot of damn hubris to do that, and it's probably worth examining your own failings and setting your narrative first. Because if you conclude that your boss is a sociopath who will never accept your narrative because it diminishes him, then what happens? Well, you may have to respond to his narrative instead of following your own. You'll start getting pretty grumpy. He's never going to promote you anyway, so why bother trying so hard? You stop giving a shit about dressing well, working hard, and carrying yourself. Do you notice how it sounds like a regression? Exactly. And that only makes it easier for him to enforce his narrative that you're an unrecognizable cog in the machine. Then you abruptly quit out of frustration, knowing you could probably get a better job elsewhere, but even that narrative is compromised now because you're no longer going on interviews with other jobs just to see what's out there and keeping your options open, which is a very strong narrative for you to hold against an interviewing employer. Now your narrative is, I need a new job. Come on, please hire me. And you can posture and pretend otherwise to some degree, but for the most part, your future prospective employers will be able to tell, or even if they can't tell, it still hurts you. For example, you'll get the job, but you may not want to discuss the compensation. But what are you going to do if they say, sorry, that offer's not the offer, there's just no room for the budget? Are you going to say no? Now, if you truly were exploring options, you would just say, no, thank you. Or I need at least a 20% increase to justify moving. And maybe they magically find some money in the budget to pay you, but if you just rage quit in frustration, you can't do that, right? Your narrative is, I need a job, hire me, and that's too weak a narrative to make any incremental salary demands. So back to the main point of this. So this is why the idea of, my wife isn't fucking me, should I use more dread on her, is a retarded question. Not because it's emotionally abusive, or it means that your anger phase or whatever, it's a retarded question because that's not how this works. It's just like asking, I'm having trouble lifting as much weight as I want, should I use more gravity? Gravity isn't something you use, it's just there, just like dread, in its most natural, passive, and purest form. It's just there as a simple byproduct of your words and your actions, and the impact of your words and actions will be perceived by those around you in a rough correlation to the strength of your narrative, which is why, for example, I preemptively nuke any whiny and annoying behavior from people in my life, mostly just by giving them an arched brow and saying, look, this must be for somebody else because I can't imagine you think I want to listen to this. I don't literally say this. I usually say something much more, normal, but that's exactly what the narrative carries across. And that's the whole point of amused mastery. Master the situation. I am not putting up with this nonsense. Because you want people to accept your narrative, not submit to it. The short-term effect is the same, but the long-term effect is similar to the aforementioned sociopathic boss. And there's some old stuff in here that's not really important, so we'll skip that. Jack talk about why he likes the Married Red Pill. I mean, at this point, you should kind of figure out why we all like it here. Anyway, so Jeff, we got to wrap up. I suspect that you've been reading this, and there's some gears in your mind churning a bit, but then 30 seconds from now, you're going to click on reply and start typing, okay, so you're saying my narrative should be... Don't do this. If you want direct prescriptive advice, anything here, sex life, work life, whatever, then my specific advice is that you log off of Reddit, think about what you and me and literally everybody else is telling you. And if you're still struggling a week for now, and by this, I don't mean how frequently your wife fucks you, but just how can you live a life according to your narrative in such a way that the outcomes are more satisfying for you, then come in here. But if you're somehow able to articulate the problems on why you're struggling and identify your own deficiencies, then you may be able to get additional insight here, but at very least, you'll probably be able to figure that out for yourself. Yeah, more of that. I guess so final thoughts on this one. It's really, like, narrative really is an important thing, and this is why I talk about the final pillar of frame being vision, is that you really have to know what the direction is in your life, because otherwise, the only thing you can do is react to the things around you. And being reactive is just supplicating your frame to some other people. And once you start getting to a point where you're no longer supplicating to other people's frames, you have to make sure that you're not treating them as the enemy and becoming resentful of it, because then they're just affecting your frame again, just in a negative way. The boss example is actually pretty good for this, where the boss starts out being really happy that you're doing all this work, but then he's resentful that you're going to outshine him. So therefore you get resentful and stop doing the work, so you teach him a lesson. It's like, no, your ways around this one. I guess long story short on that one, vision. So you understand what it is you want from life. Your wife can choose to accept that, and she can choose not to. You don't want her to submit. You don't want to beat her down and teach that bitch a lesson or hold her accountable. Because generally speaking, you're going to have a better go of your relationship if she agrees with the terms that you set, as opposed to ones that she's forced to accept. And if you don't believe me, give it 3 months, you'll find out the difference.